So what's up, y'all? Welcome to another Furry Valley Podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that you can leave any questions you have for us tonight in the podcast text channel located right above this voice chat. Any discussion you have can take place in the speaking voice channel right below that. We'll try to address as many of these questions as we can at the end of our show. Also, please keep your microphones muted for the duration of the podcast out of respect for our guests and the rest of the audience. Anyway, it's your boy Nova the Bass Skunk, and I'm here with my co-host, leader of Furry Valley and gay icon, Simba. Simba, I know you just woke up, so how was your cat nap?
I woke up and I couldn't breathe.
That's not a promising start. You might want to do something about that.
I can breathe now. Everything's good. Everything's improved. 1,000 times better.
I'm glad to hear it. So our guests tonight are Marlbearo and Deyna, two of our active and valued members here. It's great having you on tonight. How are you two doing?
I'm alright.
Good?
Okay. Glad to hear that as well. Sounds like we have a very excited group of folk with us tonight. So before we begin, let's let our audience get to know you a bit. Deyna, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your fursona?
I like to make as many people as I can happy, and the existence of Deyna is just the essence of that. Like, he's supposed to be an extension of me making people happy. I'm
That's
not sure I
really
worded that
cute.
right.
Wholesome.
He's a cute boy. And for those of us who might not know you, you are an otter, correct?
Yep. Based off the, a lot of his traits are based off the book series Redwall, which a lot of people don't know.
That's the
Even the
mouse
name?
thing, isn't it?
The main character is Mouse, yeah, in the first few books.
It's supposed to be like the premier furry literature series.
It's one of them. A lot of people don't know about it, sadly.
Well, that's unfortunate. I still need to get around to it myself. So how about you, Marlbearo? Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your fursona?
Okay, me as a person, I really like Minecraft and Ralsei from Deltarune. And my fursona is a lot of traits that I wish I had myself all jumbled up into one sloth bear. And it's very nice.
That's a cool hybrid.
I've got to say, Rousey and Minecraft, you're someone I need to get to know a little bit better. So, wonderful. Thank you two for coming out to join us. Our topic tonight is the animal within, finding your fursona. So I think the obvious question here before we dive in is, what is a fursona anyway? Marlbearo, in your own words, would you like to tell us what you think a fursona is?
To me, a fursona is like someone you would like to be, but like as an animal.
And it's as simple as that?
Just about.
I mean, I think that's a totally fair description. Deyna, do you think, do you agree, or is fursona different to you?
I mean, it's a little bit the same to me. Like, for me, it's a way to represent yourself to other people so that you don't have to fear what they'll think of you, because to you, your persona is perfect. And so they'll think it's perfect, or so on. Like, it's sort of something to help you communicate easier, too.
Yeah, I think I understand that. Though, and this is something that Simba and I have discussed in the past, especially in our Grey Muzzles discussion, I don't think that for some of us, our fursonas are necessarily perfect. Simba, would you say that your fursona is a perfect embodiment of what you'd like to be, or does it also represent those lesser or weaker qualities?
No, my persona's pretty perfect, like me. I think, I think, I don't see my fursona necessarily as a reflection of myself. When I was younger, I certainly wasn't a sort of pridey sort of person. I wouldn't have had sort of a group of 10 to 15 people that I really banded with, so that didn't really suit me. It just was sort of what I felt naturally drawn to as a species. So it certainly wasn't a reflection of me, and I didn't aspire to be like that. Just was the character that sort of came to me. It wasn't really a conscious thing for me. It just was that one makes sense, and didn't really think too much more about it. Whether it was perfect or not certainly wasn't a factor that went into it. I think some people like to make their personas more like themselves, but it doesn't really. And he is what he is, and I think to me he's the sort of strong bit of me. So whenever anything goes wrong, I sort of, I can meditate, and I've got that sort of inner sort of not quite spirit animal. That's awfully woolly and fluffy, and I don't like that crap. But the closest sort of thing to that, where he's the strong part of me that can never be touched or damaged, and I guess that's what he's a representation of.
I think that's a great way to describe the way I see my Fursona as well, and shame on me for looking for a show of humility and going to Simba there.
Oh, yeah, of course, you should know me better than that.
At this point, I really should. So, Deyna, you mentioned that your Fursona came primarily from the Redwall series. Was that the primary reason that you ended up deciding on an otter, and how has that changed over time? Have you always been an otter? Has he always had these same qualities?
I originally was actually a protogen named 5AW, Saw, and he was more of a friendly clown, that goofball, but his design was more based off of the Jigsaw series, which I liked the Jigsaw movies, despite being terrible with horror.
So your Fursona came from the Saw series?
My original one, yeah.
I've never heard that before, but please go on.
So it all started with because I was dating someone at the time, and they were progen, and I wasn't yet in the fandom. And so I thought, oh, I want to be just like them. I think that's so cool. And
so you became a serial killer like Jigsaw.
So I made a protogen that was he had black and white stripes. His whole head was black, and I had so that his visor was white. And it was a really cool design. I really like it. I still have him as a character, but it'd been a while, and I decided that it just wasn't working anymore. I don't like his design as much, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a new character. And that's when I decided to come up with Deyna. I was really into the Redwall series at the time. I had just read the Tagarung, which had this otter warrior, and he was the Raguba, or I forget. I think that's what it was. It's been a while. And so I decided to try and work with some of the ideas from the book, and even the sword that my character is supposed to carry is from the book. It's so I try to model myself now after what the morals are of my character.
So you sort of you try to aspire to be more like your character.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate you giving that little bit of history for us. Marlboro, you mentioned you're a sloth bear. Have you always been a sloth bear? And if you have, has that changed at all over time as far as the way your Fursona's qualities reflect yourself?
My previous Sona was a mix of a fennec fox and a German shepherd, I believe. And that Fursona was like super hyper. Like basically whatever I was like feeling at the time. If I was feeling edgy, it was edgy. If I was feeling hyper, it was hyper. And I just really didn't like the design. And I didn't really feel like using a fox dog anymore. So I was like, Bears are cool. Sloths are cool. I want to do that.
I think that's a totally valid reason to change your fursona. So Simba touched on this briefly before we started. Now that we've gotten a little background on y'all and how you developed your fursonas, I'd like to bring this to the rest of the fandom. So I've spoken to a lot of people over my years in the fandom, and though it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, a lot of people find that spiritual connection to their fursona. So, Marlboro, what in any part do you think spirituality has in creating a fursona, and did it play any part in you creating your own?
Spirituality, really, I don't think spirituality had anything to do in case of mine. Because, like, I really just said it was kind of cool, so it was like, yeah.
So it's
But
not
when it
so
comes
much
to
that
other
you...
people, I feel like what they feel like inside them, they want to, like, present themselves as such. And that kind of comes out a lot in the fandom.
And that definitely is big in the fandom, but you'd say with yourself, it was more just a case of...
I like these animals, so I'm now that.
You think it's cool, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that makes your fursona or your identity any less valid. Definitely not. Now, Deyna, I doubt you had some sort of spiritual connection to Jigsaw, but when creating your fursona, did you see any sort of a spiritual connection in doing so?
I'm not really a spiritual person. So it was more just I wanted to create a character that I could share with the world. Eventually, I want to write stories, so it's my start. But with Deyna, I guess I could have felt something like that. I just wouldn't remember it now.
So Deyna was more a creative exercise for you.
Sort of, yeah.
And again, that's totally valid. I remember it being brought up in a debate. I want to say it was what Sumbles said probably 2 months ago or so when we discussed, is it better to have one fursona or multiple? His response was, there is no right way to be a furry or to be a part of the fandom. And however you reach your own conclusion is equally valid. So whereas some of us might have felt, oh, I really have that connection to skunks, skinks, whatever, you still are equally valid in the fandom, and I think that's a wonderful thing about this fandom as a whole.
I think an important point I made, though, to Sumbles was you can't claim my fursona reflects me and my personality if you change your fursona every week, if you're one of these people with about 10 million fursonas, because that's just not true. Like, so if you kind of have it both ways. If you're going to act like your fursona is a reflection of yourself and who or what you aspire to be, then you probably shouldn't have 10 million fursonas. Just stick to one.
Well, I mean, it could reflect their emotional state, or
yeah.
if
your emotional state changes 10 times a day, you probably have emotional issues. I mean, it's not.
I mean, that's true. That could be a sign so that you could go get help.
Yeah,
I think being a part of the fandom in general is a sign you might need help.
Yeah, if you spend that much on art and fursona pictures, you probably need help as well. Or to buy Furry Valley Guardian. That's a good way to use your money.
Called out, damn.
Shameless self-promotion, huh?
Oh, that is guaranteed in a Simba event.
I'm good at advertisement, absolutely.
I think your advertising scheme is, oh, is there a blank moment? Let's plug FVG real quick. Alrighty, so moving back on topic. I know a lot of folk here, though they might identify as furry, don't have a fursona. Marlboro, just how important do you think having a fursona is for participating in the fandom?
Not really. If you say you're a furry, bam, you're a furry. Congrats.
I agree 100%. I know I have definitely been disagreed with in the past, but no, that's exactly how I feel about it. Deyna, do you agree? Do you think do you think having a fursona makes it any more Let me rephrase that. Do you think that by not having a fursona, you're missing out on anything in the fandom?
No, not really. It's just if you wanna, you aren't really. It's just that simple. If you like anthropomorphic characters, then bam, that's it. Just like what's her name, Marlbearo. I agree pretty much 100%.
I think there are a couple of important things, though. I mean, for many furries, RP is a big thing, and if you don't have a persona, you'll quickly find that most furries are not going to RP with you as a human. That's one thing. But also, I think that even if you feel settled, there are a lot of furries who will be kind of exclusionary towards you if you don't have a persona. If you are proud to just be a human hanging out with furries, now most furries I know would think that was kind of strange. If you're someone who just hasn't chosen a persona yet, that's a little bit different. But someone like Paco, for example, okay, he fits in here, but that's because people know him. If you just have some random human join and try to cuddle up with the furries, that's a bit weird. And I think people point to that, and they're not afraid to say, "Oh, you're a human." Okay, that's a little strange.
I would have to assume you're just a furry in denial.
Well, yeah, we do that, but you can't do that for too long. And if the person's quite adamant that no, I'm not a furry, I've just been rejected so hard by normal people that this is the only place I've got, then
And you're obviously going to think, oh wow, what's wrong with this guy that he's got to hang out with furries?
Right, yeah, Paco, where you going?
He's not here tonight. We have to roast the absolute hell out of him.
Of course, he'll listen sooner or later.
Simba,
Yeah,
you mentioned that people don't want to RP with someone who's a human.
I think a lot of
Right.
furries, would not
Yeah.
RP with humans, myself included.
So that reminds me of a friend I used to have. They liked to RP, but nobody would RP with them, like you said. So they would they tried to RP as a human, but they couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up just doing a random animal every once in a while. But eventually, it started to just set in that they were becoming or creating a persona with every time they did an RP thing, and they ended up just creating a Fursona accidentally, which is an interesting thing.
So that just furthers my point that non-furries who hang out with furries are just furries in denial, right?
We convert them by RPing with them and being degenerate. That's what we've learned tonight.
I'm about to send that big ooh-woo to Paco. See if we can get that. Alrighty. Well, moving on from that, we discussed those who don't have a fursona, but on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's plenty here that have several fursonas. And while some see them as alternate characters, maybe something just to role-play with but not necessarily represent themselves, others see all of their fursonas as equally valid as their primary or original fursona. So, Deyna, how would you feel about those with multiple fursonas, and do you think that changes the way they interact with or participate with the fandom?
I gotta admit, sometimes it's a little confusing for me interacting with them, but I don't think it changes how they interact with others that much. Just
One of my old best friends had about, I swear every time I spoke to him, he had a different persona, and it just became annoying after a while because it felt, I think as a furry, I get to know people by their persona, and there's a certain weird feeling of discontinuity if each time I talk to you, you're a different animal. I can't build up that sort of familiarity with you. I think that can be quite difficult for the other person, even if it's not difficult for the person themselves. It feels awkward.
I mean, I know that I won't say that it causes me any sort of stress or anxiety or confusion necessarily. I still feel that it almost as if I might not be talking to the same person.
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's
I can't say I feel the same.
What about if their personas have different personalities and such, though?
What's the point of having multiple fursonas if they all have the same personality?
Well, yeah, my point is to Dana, sort of, how do you feel that you don't notice a difference if their personas are well developed and have different personalities?
If they have different personalities, I mean, under the surface of it all, it's still the same person. So that's how I sort of look at it.
Yeah. It's not that I like them
It can be difficult, but
just going a little bit back to what Nova said about them having to have different personalities, or what's the point? Now, I disagree with that. Sometimes I get a mood where I'm like, I want to RP with a raccoon or a hyena or a tiger, and if I have a friend who's willing to play as multiple things with roughly the same personality, yeah, that's a yay for me. So I think there is a place for multiple characters, different species, but same essence, if you will.
Marlboro, do you think that someone with multiple fursonas interacts fundamentally different with the fandom than someone with just one fursona?
It's confusing for me a little. Like, it depends on like how often they'll like switch between them. Because like if someone's a different Sona every week, it's kind of hard to keep track.
Somebody's joined the call.
Yeah, people come in partway through. That's fine.
But would you say that, assuming this is someone who keeps track of their fursonas, doesn't change, several times a day, that they aren't getting a necessarily different experience from those with just one fursona?
Not in my opinion.
Say, as opposed to multiple fursonas, what do you guys think about these people who have really weird hybrids? So they're like a dragon, horse, wolf, tiger, bear, and these silly where they combine about 1 million animals into one.
It's entirely going to depend on the art for me. If you can describe it however you want, but once it gets too complex, I'm not going to be able to envision it. So if you've got art of your fursona and I think that it looks aesthetically pleasing, then go ahead, you do you. I mean, you do you regardless. If you want to be half shark, half banana slug, then do what you want. But
I would not RP with that, just for the record.
What if it was the top half that was slug?
I would not RP with that, just for the record.
This is getting into Avatar: The Last Airbender levels of species.
Absolutely. I know Simba's into skeletons as of late.
I am not. Oh my god! Right. So,
excuse me. What?
I have a friend who I had a friend. I blocked him after this because I was annoyed. He mostly is a sheep, and I like him as a raccoon. And I've expressed to him quite clearly, look, I don't like your sheep. I think sheep are shit as a species. Go and be a raccoon for me. And he messaged me. I tell people it as it is. That's one of my things. And he messaged me the other day, and he was a skeleton. And he thought that would impress me. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm a skeleton. He was like, what was the he's just siphon the undead Skeletor or something. And I'm like, why would you possibly think I was into this? And we had an argument, and I expressed to him that I didn't want to associate with him anymore, and I was disappointed by him every time we spoke. I have a way with words when I'm frustrated, and if he's listening, I stand by what I said. I only like you as a raccoon. Sorry. Bye.
Moral of the story, if you're looking to find new RP partners, you probably shouldn't try skeleton.
That was a poor choice. That was an absolutely poor choice.
Sad thing is, I think I know somebody that would like that.
To be totally clear, this is someone who I only really associate with for RP. It's not like a friend who I'm like, lol, by the way, I'm not friends with you anymore because you're a skeleton now instead of like a wolf. No, it wasn't anything like that, So
this was a suggestion I got from Sumbles before we even polled our topics, and I thought it was a fascinating topic. He's one of our regulars here. He shows up almost every week, and we love having him. Turns out he's not here tonight, so I don't get to lay all that praise on him. He asked how we felt about the creation of a fursona versus a facade. And in his own words, he sees a fursona as an extension of ourselves, and he he thinks that it's primarily how older furs view themselves, whereas newer furs might use their character as sort of a facade or a mean of hiding oneself and embracing totally separate from ourselves. So, Marlboro, do you agree with his assessment? And do you think that's any way tied to age to the fandom?
I'm kind of half and half, because with my persona, I mixed in traits I like with myself, but to keep the connection, I also mixed in some of my own traits. For example, my son is very, very, very social compared to me, whereas I kept in sort of like my sense of empathy and a little bit of clinginess to my friends, because I'm very lonely.
And before we got involved in this podcast tonight, I spoke to you a little bit, and you mentioned how you'd been in the fandom for a couple years now. And now that you've gotten older, can you say that your persona has changed as a result? And do you think that's exposure to the fandom? Do you think that it's gotten older, or do you think it's totally unrelated?
I'd say it's gotten a little older.
I mean, not your persona itself, but...
Oh,
I mean, is the way that you view or treat your persona different as you've gotten older?
In a sense, I do kind of view it as like it's getting closer to myself.
I think, in a way, what Sumbles was saying was kind of a tautology, in the sense that if your persona represents your ideal self, generally as people get older, they work towards being the self that they want to be. And so it sort of is self-defining that as you get older, if that is the case, you move closer towards what your persona is. But I think for the people like me, where we never made our persona with the idea that this is what I want to be, like, it's not as true.
And how do you feel about that, Deyna? Do you think it's... it sounds almost the way that Simba puts it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if you keep that persona when you're younger and you keep it as you go on, that you're aspiring to be that person and it more becomes yourself. Do you think that's accurate? And do you think that there's an innate difference in the way that younger and older furs view their persona?
It all varies on the person and how they were raised, what their views on pretty much everything is. So, I agree, it could be accurate for some people, but it could be miles off for others people. And I think age has nothing to do with it. It's just your outlook on life.
What do you mean, I don't know, when you started your answer, I almost got a religious feel off it, as if your belief system changes the way that you would view a persona.
Oh, my brain is short-circuiting.
I mean, you kind of inadvertently pointed to a very complex and nuanced issue. I can't blame you for stammering a little there, and if you don't have an answer for us right this moment, that's all right.
So I think, reflecting on what was said in an earlier podcast about, I think, some sort of religion, one of the people on there, I think, was a pagan or a Wiccan or something like that, and they sort of were symbolizing that toward their religion, their persona. But I think people's religious views often does change over time. If you're in a religious family, often your religious views as a child will simply be what your parents are. And it's only as you become an adult that will evolve and change, now that you have the space for it to evolve and change.
And I can't disagree with that. So, we're going to be moving to audience questions shortly. So again, anyone with questions can put them in the podcast text channel right above this voice chat. Before we do, I just have a couple more quick questions. Bless you.
Thank you.
I was going to address this to Deyna first, but he's already had his outburst. So Marlboro,
Huh?
you are a sloth bear. If you just for some reason had to pick a new species to represent your fursona, what would it be and why?
Maybe a rabbit.
A rabbit? You've had some interesting hybrids in the past, so you'd be going to just a rabbit there?
Maybe a rabbit and something else that I can't get to my head right now.
A sea slug.
Sea bunny.
I don't know. I think we could do with another Tiggy Bunnerkins.
Tiggy Bunnykins, indeed, yeah. You know, if you say it 3 times, he turns into one for real.
Tiggy Bunnerkins.
And we have-
Tiggy Bunnerkins. Tiggy Bunnerkins.
Oh,
It
yeah.
sounds like Reese's Puff rap.
Oh my goodness.
Did you also know every time you say it, you have to send him a GIF pic? So now you owe him 3.
Oh no!
Joke's on him, it's all gonna be straight.
Oh no!
Oh no!
I'm sorry, Tiggy Bunnykins.
Alrighty. Deyna, you've
Oh.
been an otter now for a while. If you could not be an otter, though, what would you make your fursona?
I thought about it, like, while she was talking about what she would do. And I was doing one of the campaigns in TTRPG the other day, and I had to make a character. Blah, blah. So I'd probably go with a hare, but I'd make it a hybrid with a badger, sticking to my inspiration from Redwall.
You guys like lapines then?
They like them big teeths.
Yeah, I'm Bucktooth.
You like eating your own poo-poo?
No.
What
So
about
what do
you,
you?
Nova?
What about be what?
What if you didn't be a skunk? What would you?
Oh.
I don't mean. Would you eat poo? For goodness' sake! Where is your mind? I know you're a skunk, but like stereotypes. Come on.
Goodness gracious! If I wasn't a skunk, I'd be a bear. Easy.
Okay.
They're super snuggly. I'm just not used to being big.
Hmm.
So before we go from there, Simba, since you put me on the spot, what about you? If you're not a and no liger, no tiger, none of that. If you couldn't be a big cat,
No
what-
tiger, no tiger. That's a bit mean. Tigers and lions are perfectly fine, different species. But no, I would be a fox. It's not close. I love foxes. The way they do things with their tails, like swish them, raise them.
the
know,
way they
foxing.
scream incoherently.
Yeah, the way they go, because who knows what the fox says. When you find out what the fox says, how it vocalizes, you wish you never fucking found out. It sounds obnoxious, but I love foxes. They're I don't really have a reason for this is what I aspire to be like or some bullshit. It's just I'm like I quite like them. I have an affiliation for them, affinity for them.
You know, if we were sticking to that, this is what I want to be.
You'd all be lions. You would all be lions if you could be, but you're not. Only I'm the lion.
I actually have a character that is named John Doe, and he's just like basically a walking corpse.
Oh, God.
So
Let me put you on the do not RP list.
I just I appreciate that, but I want to get rid of him very badly. I've been trying to get rid of him, but nobody wants him.
You know, you're allowed to let some characters just die out. Make it a Stephen King novel there.
If he's already dead.
It's gonna die again.
I mean, how could you create a fursona off of Jigsaw and not realize you can just kill off your characters?
Have him but he was supposed to be like very not Jigsaw. Like the idea got like really messed up by the time it reached the factory. So when they made him, he's just like this lovable clown goofball with the same design. So he'd have to accidentally kill.
Ready. So, thank you both. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the audience questions we have. But before we do so, I just wanted to let y'all leave us with some parting words. And Marlboro, this was a big reason you wanted to join us tonight, so please, if you could give any advice to those trying and struggling to create your fursona, what would it be?
Let's see. First things first. If you don't really like the common wolf cat kind of thing, you don't have to. There's no big guidelines to being a furry or having a fursona. Just do what you want. Like, you think, hey, I want to be a spider. Then go out there and be the best damn spider you can be.
Absolutely. We need more banana slugs in this fandom. So what about you, Deyna? If you could give your one piece of advice to everyone tonight who's trying to create a fursona, what would that be?
Do what your heart desires, you know? If you can't figure it out, do your favorite animal and let it come naturally to you as time goes on.
And like we've said before, that there is no wrong way to enjoy the fandom. Don't let
Exactly.
anyone make you feel bad about your choices. If you want to make your fursona sea slug vampire, go ahead. Do what makes you enjoy the fandom and don't let anyone bring you down for it.
I want to meet a sea slug vampire. Somebody make a sea slug vampire.
I've already
Already
done loads
here.
of it.
Don't be a skeleton.
What?
Okay, yeah, you can be whatever you want as long as it's not a skeleton.
As long as you don't try to RP with me as something weird.
I want to go ahead and thank both of y'all for your time tonight. You've given us a lot to think about, and while I'm out of questions, our audience certainly is not. We still have time. Anyone interested in asking questions can do that anytime before our show ends. Just put them in the podcast text channel. So let's get started.
Do we mute ourselves?
No.
I'm going to be reading them out. They have been posted in the podcast text channel for us.
Okay.
So we answered parts of a lot of these questions at some point tonight. So let's start with Captain Vors. He wants to know what you love the most about your fursona. Marlboro, would you like to go first for us?
Let's see. Maybe the amount of connection it has to a friend of mine because they helped design my fursona. And we have a whole kind of thing where me and their fursona, it's they're roommates and they have a lot of shenanigans they get into.
Actually, not the kind of answer I was expecting. So it's great to hear that you have some sort of actual connection to the creation of your fursona. What about you, Deyna? What do you love the most about your otter?
Well, the thing that I love the most probably be that I made him to be this courageous character, and I've always liked those sort of hero stories like King Arthur or that sort of old-fashioned story. Anyways, and I have a connection because I feel like that if I tried hard enough, I could reach the same level that I put my character on. He is what I want to be in the end.
I think that's a wonderful answer, and I definitely relate to the way I see Nova in that, where he definitely represents who I am. At the same time, he is that absolute lovable chipper skunko 100% of the time, and that's something that, even if that represents me as a rule, it's something I would like to embody all the time. Now, this is an interesting question that came from, I'm going to say it's Myrang. Deyna, would you say that having a fursona, not necessarily being in the fandom, but having a fursona itself, has that at all affected or changed your life?
And it's affected how people refer to me. That's about it.
It's a fair answer. What about you, Marlboro? Would you say it's affected or changed your life at all, having a fursona to represent you?
Definitely. Like I did mention a couple of times I've had traits I wanted in myself into my persona, and like a few years ago I would have never done something like this because I'd be way too nervous. But now, like, as I've grown and kind of grown into the character, here I am. I also have a bunch of people sending me cartons of Marlboro cigarettes.
I've got to say, I've always absolutely loved your name. Every time I send out PMs, I say, "Oh, it's Marlboro."
Quick question: are we also going to be answering questions that are in the Twitch chat?
Oh, do we have people asking questions in Twitch chat? That should have been our man Corn feeding them to us.
We don't have any serious questions. Someone asked, "How is our relationship with My Little Pony community?" In which I say, "Burn all of them."
Simba wants to joke all he wants, but I've been through all the cards.
Joke.
Cards, and oh my goodness, we definitely have bronies here, and we aren't treating them differently.
To be totally clear, we don't. It's not that we have bronies and that's why we have loads of brony cards. What we did initially when we were constructing our deck is we took all of the existing furry and brony decks and we put all of the cards in a spreadsheet and we rated all of the cards based on how good they are. So that's why we have some brony cards. It's not because we were like, lol, we better appease the bronies in our community and have like 400 brony cards.
No, that means that the admins consistently rated them high enough to put them in that deck.
There's cards in that deck about burning all ponies, and yeah, I would rate that highly. Yeah, for sure.
I'm friends with some people that are in that community. I mean, I find it interesting. I even tried it out once. I didn't like it. It was a bad experience.
I find it this may come across as a little bit no, I should be honest. Look, I think it's strange that people who are grown adults like a cartoon intended for little girls. I find that unsettling. If as a person you just so happen to have a horse persona that you call a pony, yeah, whatever, shrug, I'll accept you. But I still think it's a bit weird.
Marlboro, you've been suspiciously quiet.
Wait, what? I spaced out, I'm not gonna lie.
How you feel about bronies?
You live your life. Just don't go attacking a furry for being a furry if you watch a show for intended for children.
I love her. 100%.
The idea of one community attacking the other is stupid, just to be clear.
Exactly, like we're all a little weird.
We're all in the same boat.
We're all in the same boat. Don't push each other
There's
out.
a very fine line between that community and this community.
Alright, so...
I'd go as far as to say it's a subset of this community.
Yeah, no. I think if you view them as having horse personas, then yeah, I would totally agree, Deyna. Which they don't like, so...
There's a difference between being a nondescript furry who could live in any universe and, fit in that universe where, a brony fursona, quote unquote, is, are we really going to call it a brosona? I think I am. If it is made specifically for that universe, then I'm not sure. And we can't pretend that furriness isn't some kind of level of obsession with anthropomorphism, but that would, to me, seems more like an obsession with a specific subsect.
I mean, I've always defined you are a furry if you have a fursona, and I've never differentiated that a fursona has to be anthro, so to me, you have a fursona because it's a horse, or a pony if you want to call it that, so therefore you're a furry. So it's that simple to me.
So is Lightning McQueen a furry?
What's McQueen's persona?
No, Lightning McQueen, the car from Cars. Or the brave little
car is not an animal, therefore
That's still anthropomorphizing a vehicle.
Well, but I said it's a furry character. Fursona is a furry character.
What about a shark? They don't have fur.
A shark, well, yeah, okay, it fits within the anthro community, but it's not a... What the hell is a shark? Shark is slightly furry, I think. It has hair on its outside, whatever the fuck it's outside's called. I can't think what material is the shark made out of. Because it's not scaly. It's sort of blubbery water repellent, but it does have some short I don't know if you call it fur, but it has hair at least.
Oh, goodness. This is what Google is for. What is the outside of a whale called?
A shark, yeah. It's probably called skin or something equally boring.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get a quick answer, so I think this is a perfect time to move to a new question. Quick aside, Dalmatian asks why he's the only Dalmatian. The answer is you are not. Dogs are one of the top 5 fursonas, and of those, of specific dog species, I want to say Dalmatian is one of the top 5 after non-specified / mixed.
And they're all good dogs.
Oh yeah, I love Dalmatians. I had a pet for 6 years or so. He was Dalmatian. Lovely guy.
102 Dalmatians.
Yeah. Little silly tails that go whack, whack, whack.
No, I think this is a great question for us to answer at some point before we end. This is from Meow, someone who does not have a fursona. And he says, as someone without a fursona, does having one change how you act, or if you have multiple, do they each have their own ego you abide to? And he follows up by saying he feels that it would change who he is, and he's someone who has a confused sense of self. So do you think that embracing one of these fursonas might be detrimental to finding himself? So I guess the question is, if you have trouble finding yourself, does creating a fursona make that any more difficult, or might that help you find yourself?
Going back to what I said earlier, Meow, my fursona doesn't represent me. I didn't create my fursona to become him or to really have that sort of sense in mind. So I don't think it's changing who you are. If you try to embody your fursona and become your fursona, sure, it might do. But if you just have a character, then...
Do you agree, Marlboro?
The way I've usually seen it, like, I guess it would really depend on, do you plan on, like, making it what you would like to be, or you just want to, like, go around and say, look, I'm this thing. And kind of the personality, if you plan to actually abide to these egos, like, I could see it being detrimental if maybe, like, you have, like, I don't want to be, like, a, like, mean or anything, like, a really, really edgy persona of sorts. Like, if you're in a bad mindset and you just have a persona that kind of encourages this, it's most likely not going to stop. But if you don't really, like, plan on, like, abiding to those egos, like, it's fine.
That is a fabulous point to bring up. Without a doubt, having a fursona, I think, might give you something to aspire to, but you can very well aspire to be something terrible. So just because you're able to work towards something doesn't mean it's something worth working toward.
Absolutely.
Precisely.
And that's nothing to do with furry, that's just a good general point.
Do you have anything to add there, Deyna?
Well, for the purpose of the question, I believe, again, like I said earlier, it's a case-to-case basis. If you make your character what you want to be, and you only have that character, that could honestly be beneficial to who you are, who you perceive yourself as, and who you will be to other people.
And I agree. And I really think Marlboro hit it on the head here tonight. If you don't have a fursona and you're trying to work towards something as a person, then yes, having a fursona might help you find a better sense of self or further yourself as a person, but you always have that ability to aspire towards something terrible. So you have to check yourself.
I think if you don't have a persona as well, I'd encourage you to not be afraid to choose one. You can always change. Don't be afraid that, oh, I got to get it right first time, otherwise I'm stuck with a persona that doesn't fit me. If you don't like it, go and choose a different one. In fact, that's a good way if you're not sure, because you might only realize whether something fits or not if you try embodying it for a couple of weeks, a month, or however long.
That's what I did with Star.
And I've not always been the skunk I am now.
Did
I
you
was
have
a
a
Oh
persona?
no, but you've been something different?
I was a wolf boyo for a couple of years. But I've been a skunk for 8 or so.
Fluffy tail still as a wolf. I see what happened.
I've got my priorities straight, trust me.
I do like those big fluffy tails. Fox has one, you know.
Alrighty, so I think that was a great question to end on tonight. So I think it's time to bring us to a close. Deyna, Marlbearo, it was wonderful having you both here tonight. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
It was fun to be here.
Be sure to be checking those announcements, react to anything else you'd like to speak on. I'd love to hear from you both at some point. And of course, I want to thank Simba for taking his time out of his busy day to join us. You were wonderful as always.
Thanks, and likewise.
Much appreciated. So our next podcast will be same time, same place, Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Next week's topic is Fursuiting 101, Fursuiting for Beginners. If you're a fursuiter and interested in joining us next week, don't hesitate to DM me. I'm Nova. I'm really excited for this topic. I'm someone who's looking to get into fursuiting within the next couple months, and it's something super exciting. It's a form of performance. And that's everything we have tonight. So thank you for coming, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I promise you I did, as always. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful night.